Bonnie Dumanis decides she won't run for another term as San Diego County District Attorney. Protests against the steep rise in Mexican gas prices close the San Ysidro port of entry again. As rain swells the San Diego River, we look at the toxic and messy rules governing runoff. And affordable housing in North County is both attractive and very rare. I'm Mark Sauer. The KPBS Roundtable starts now. Welcome to our discussion of the week's top stories. I'm Mark Sauer, and joining me at the KPBS Roundtable today, are reporter Dana Littlefield, who covers legal affairs for the San Diego Union Tribune. Hi, Dana.
Hi, Mark.
Good to have you back. Reporter Brooke Binkowski of Voice of San Diego. Hi, Brooke.
Hi, Mark.
Glad you're here today. Reporter Ry Rivard, also of Voice of San Diego. Hi, Ry.
Hey, Mark.
Glad to see you again. And KPBS North County reporter Allison St. John.
Good to be here, Mark.
Glad you're here today, Allison. Well, there is a lot going on in Washington, D.C. this week, but we're focusing today on local news. Bonnie Dumanis, who's been district attorney in San Diego since the first term of President George W. Bush, is leaving. Dumanis announced this week that she won't seek a fifth term in office come 2018. Now, Dana, you reported this week she may actually leave before that current term is up. What's the reason behind her leaving?
Well, she said basically that she hadn't made a decision as to whether she would step down early, although it is certainly a possibility. She basically said that she has more to do. If she were to step down before her term is over, then the Board of Supervisors would have to select an interim person to hold that position in the interim. And theoretically, that person, then once the election does come around, that person could run again as an incumbent. Okay,
kind of a leg up there in what would be a wide open race, right, without the incumbent. Now, it's a visible job, very powerful job, of course, ups and downs. Anybody who's been there as long as she has is going to have their share of victories and taking it on the chin. But even this week, some defense attorneys said nice things about her, public defenders.
Yes. Henry Coker, the public defender, had some very nice things about her. He basically said that she had been a conscientious leader of that office, that she was very good at listening to both sides, that's the way he put it, and also being, cognizant of some of the things that defendants face in their lives that bring them to a certain point. For example, whatever childhood trauma that person may have had, whatever mental illness that person may suffer from, and how those factors can perhaps influence their behavior later on and perhaps their criminal behavior.
Okay. Mm-hmm. We do have a bite I want to set up here during the primary for her last election, where she actually did have a bit of a tough race. She talked about her accomplishments during a debate here at KPBS. Let's hear that.
I'm focused on what's important in this race, and that is the district attorney's office, human trafficking, cyber crimes, elder abuse. Just yesterday, we got a verdict for guilty for a murderer, a gang member, that we're holding accountable. And today when I leave, you know what we're going to do? We're going to announce with the chief of police taking off 79 people dealing in drugs off the streets from downtown San Diego and East Village.
So I think that case you were referring to was a gang case. She lists that among her accomplishments was cracking down on gangs here?
Well, there have been many gang cases and many gang conspiracy cases in particular. One that came up in 2014, though, really upset quite a few people in the community, specifically because of the charge that the case was filed under, one of the charges that was used against some of the defendants. It was Penal Code 182.5, which was basically a little or not at all used section of the Penal Code, which basically said that a person, a defendant, a gang member, could be held liable for the crimes of others as long as that defendant assisted, promoted, or benefited from the crime. And so some of the people who were involved in that case, who were charged in that case, essentially were not directly involved in murders or other types of crimes, but there had been Facebook posts and rap lyrics that prosecutors said connected them to those crimes.
So that was creative, to say the least. And how did that turn out for the district attorney?
Well, and I should say, I mean, it's not uncommon for rap lyrics or Facebook posts to come up in a gang conspiracy case. But what seemed to be different in this case, at least what some argued was different, was that that may have been the only evidence that tied them to certain defendants, not all the defendants, but certain defendants to these crimes. And so, judges heard this evidence, and the judges actually dismissed those conspiracy charges against several of those defendants. Now, there were still others who were convicted of felony crimes.
Okay. I did want to note somebody else who maybe surprisingly you wouldn't think would be singing the praises of a district attorney, but this is Justin Brooks, director of the California Innocence Project. He says, I'll be disappointed to see Bonnie Dumanis step down from the DA's office. She's shown a true commitment to examining old cases. Her office prosecutor, cooperating on reopening cases where there was a wrongful conviction. I hope the office will continue down this path of true justice. And that is the case. When you're there that long, they get it wrong sometimes. We've had a number of notorious false accusations and prosecutions in this county. Has she been pretty good on that?
Well, when I spoke to her earlier in the week, she specifically mentioned the conviction review unit that was set up recently, where basically there are deputies who are going over old cases and looking to see, was there a problem here? Was there something that should have been looked at that wasn't? So she has cited that among among the high points in her long tenure there.
And other high points, of course, were the very high-profile prosecution in the tragic killing of Chelsea King, Amber Dubois. And tell us about that. And she spared what would have been a painful trial in that case, right?
Yes, that was an extremely high-profile case, not just here in San Diego County, but it made national news. This was a case involving two young North County girls, both of whom were killed. Turns out they were both killed and actually sexually assaulted by the same defendant. He was a convicted sex offender who had been living with his mother in North County and attacked these two girls about roughly a year apart. So what ended up happening was that there was enough evidence to convict this defendant on Chelsea King's murder, but there was not as much or enough at all really to tie him to Amber. And so the deal that was struck between the prosecution and the defense was that John Gardner, the defendant, would plead guilty to the murder and rape charges and would disclose where Amber's remains were, which otherwise probably never would have come out. And the death penalty was taken off the table. He's serving 2 life terms without the possibility of parole. All
right, a couple seconds left in this segment. Will she be remembered as a successful DA? Of course, there was that controversy in the last election with the entanglement and the money coming in, the campaign finance stuff with the Mexican millionaire. Overall, a successful DA, you think?
Well, I mean, she has a pretty high conviction rate, and that's frankly, as it should be for any DA.
Where the rubber meets the road, yeah.
The rules are you're supposed to, not charge someone unless you have the goods, unless you have
and put bad guys away, yeah.
Yes.
I just wanted to address the transition because in some ways looking forward, that's what's interesting is if in fact the supervisors get to appoint somebody, they themselves are all going to be termed out in a couple of years, 4 years, and yet this would give them a chance to sort of preserve that legacy of the kind of law enforcement that they would like to see continuing in the future.
Yes.
All right, well, we'll see what happens and who replaces her and how that works out. We're going to move on now. For nearly a century, gas prices in Mexico were subsidized and regulated by the government. That changed with the new year when prices jumped 20%, sparking protests and violence in Baja and elsewhere. Brooke, a lot of dynamics going up here. Start with, why did these gas prices shoot up all of a sudden?
Well, the Mexican government has been promising that to privatize the oil and gas industry would be making the prices go much lower because of all the competition. But as it turns out, Mexico is drying up. Oil and gas reserves all over the world are drying up. The price of oil and gas is getting higher and higher, and that's reflected in the pumps in Mexico. And people in Mexico weren't exactly blindsided by it because they knew it was going on, they knew it was going to happen. But that combined in Baja with the proposed privatization of water and also an extremely small minimum wage hike, plus the devalued peso, has just made everything really, really difficult for the middle class, the lower middle class, the people who are relying on minimum wage to feed their families. It's also affected the price of food, the price of other goods, because they have to...
Transportation,
right.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and of course, as you say, and I said in the outset, a lot of dynamics, a lot of moving parts to this story, but gas prices, everybody gets that in every economy. When they shoot up, it's just such a staple. It's like the price of milk. And so how did it work? Was this all regulated and subsidized by the government, and now the idea is to have far more competition in the long run, which would supposed to help the market?
Yeah, and it always sounds so good. You know, it sounds so lofty to have this vibrant competition and to drive down the prices through that competition. But the first few weeks are never going to be good.
Can get really messy.
And there was no mitigating factor in place. I mean, people just got squeezed and squeezed and squeezed. So this was kind of, I think, one of the things that has just sent people out in the streets. It's been cooking for a long time, and this has just been kind of the lit match. I've heard people over and over in Mexico say Mexico's a powder keg. All it needs is a match, and this might be the match.
That might be it, and we'll see how that goes on. Allison, go ahead.
Well, ironically, it seems like, immigration has declined, partly because Mexico's been doing better. And now with the new administration, and it seems like things that are triggering some real problems in Mexico's economy, that could have the reverse intended effect of increasing immigration into this country illegally.
Absolutely. I mean, people are just going to do what they can and go where they can. They're going to follow market forces. I mean, I think people forget when they talk about immigration and undocumented people, what they're doing is legitimately the essence of following market forces. They don't want to leave their homes. Nobody wants to leave home and put down roots in an uncertain country and an uncertain future.
Could run it right into a border wall and steeped up border enforcement and all sorts of things with the new Trump administration. We do have a bite here I wanted to set up. KPBS interviewed several people about their thoughts on the increase in gas prices, and here's a clip from that.
Lourdes Jimenez lives in San Diego and says she's worried about her family in Mexico.
People don't have enough money to eat unless they have enough money to buy so much gasoline.
She says the problem is bigger than the 20% gasoline price hike.
It's terrible when you see the people working in the factories and they make $50 a week for a whole week of work. And $50 for a family of four is nothing.
So that gets at just what you were saying a moment ago here. So tell us, how bad have some of these protests been? It's been a deadly situation some places.
In some parts of Mexico, yes. But I would not say that the protests are bad. Over and over again, I've heard a commitment from protesters to keep it peaceful and to be visible and raucous and loud, but to not vandalize anything and to not be violent. And for the most part, the protests have remained that way. However, there has been a lot of police violence recorded, especially in Rosarito. There was a case of somebody driving a truck.
Yeah, there was an incident there, wasn't there?
Yeah, and they haven't publicly, as far as I know, they haven't publicly identified the person who was driving, but police there say that they have identified the person and that it was a protester. Okay. I don't know.
If that's true. Who knows if that's true in a situation like this?
Who knows? I also have heard anecdotes and seen news stories about extreme police violence against journalists. A lot of journalists are getting beaten up throughout the country. I heard about that happening also in Rosarito.
Now, a few seconds left here. I did want to get to the point the president has not been terribly popular. This doesn't seem like it's going to enhance that situation down there.
He has been an extraordinarily unpopular president, and it's really made a lot of people angry. I mean, I have to say as well, this is not just about gas. This is about widespread corruption, a high impunity rate. This is about the protests that end with students being disappeared.
Water situation.
The water situation, although that seems to possibly have resolved itself. That's Baja California's commitment to privatize water as well as gasoline, and they've really stepped back on that since the protests.
All right. Well, we'll continue to watch the reporting on this. It's just fascinating, and it's going to, as you say, play right into the U.S. border, and everything is happening here with the new administration. Well, California is often thought of as a leader when it comes to protecting the environment. That's why news that thousands of businesses could be polluting our waterways and brazenly defying environmental rules is so shocking. we have an extensive system to prevent waterway pollution. But Rai, well, start there. Tell us about that. The system is in place. This isn't supposed to be happening, what you've been reporting on.
Yeah, the federal and state governments have been working since the 1970s to clean up the nation's waters, and they started with sort of the large polluters, and then they moved to smaller and smaller polluters. And the stories that we wrote were about small industrial sites. We're talking scrap yards, vineyards are included, certain kinds of warehouses.
Any place where bad stuff can go out into the stormwater system and into the waterways.
Yeah. And the first problem is the state doesn't know how many businesses it's trying to regulate. There are estimates anywhere between 10 and 130,000 businesses.
Big gap, yeah.
Huge gap. So that's a big problem. There are some estimates that suggest, at least in San Diego, that more businesses are not following the law by enrolling in this permit system than actually are. So there's more pollution coming from the businesses that we don't know about than the businesses that we do know about.
Yeah, and we'll get into that in a minute. That creates its only problems for the good guys who are trying to do the right thing and kind of get a double whammy on that. Now, among the disturbing facts in your stories is that state environmental regulators, as you say, don't even know how many companies are causing this type of pollution. Why do so many get away without having to get industrial permits? And they're pretty expensive, aren't they?
Yeah, compliance costs can be $37,000 a year is an estimate that the state has produced.
And for a small business, that can be a big nut.
Yeah, that could be the end for some businesses. One of the reasons that the state doesn't know is that the state doesn't know. They don't. These businesses are technically required to enroll in the system, but for instance, when they get their business license, their normal business license to open and operate, they don't have to tell, for instance, the city, hey, we're complying with this stormwater regulation. They just get a business license, and then they're expected to, at some point, begin complying with the stormwater regulation.
The stories kind of suggest that the head of the County Regional Water Quality Control Board, David Gibson, is a little caught, because I know from talking to him that his motivation is to stop pollution. And instead, it seems like we've got fines, we've got paying for fees for this and that. Is he a bit caught by the way the state is enforcing the laws?
Well, one of the things that he suggested and that others have suggested is that the amount of pollution coming from a small site is relatively minuscule. That adds up to a big problem, but you have tens of thousands of businesses that need to be regulated that on their own potentially aren't causing major water quality problems, but that combined are.
But if you find them, they don't necessarily, it doesn't necessarily clean it up. I mean, it might put them out of business.
It might put them out of business.
He seems to be much more in favor of negotiating with people so that they clean it up rather than asking them to pay enormous fines.
And it creates a disincentive to even identify yourself, to raise your hand to say, I might be polluting, because then you're caught in the system where you might get punished.
Yeah, and you've cited a couple of folks who have done that and said, I'm trying to do the right thing and get the permit and all of a sudden they shine a spotlight on themselves, and meanwhile a competitor or a neighbor just keeps quiet and saves the money on the permit, and they don't get caught. Right?
Absolutely. That's one of the things that Gibson talked to us about. He said, if I'm a guy running a clean auto scrap yard right next to a guy who's not even following any part of the law, I'm paying a lot of money to comply with the law, losing profit to comply with the law, and the person next to me who may never be found or discovered is profiting from polluting.
Yeah, so you almost feel like a fool if you're trying to do the right thing there.
Absolutely. And then when they're complying with the law, they're reporting data to the state. And oftentimes they're saying, we've slightly exceeded this amount of copper allowed in the water. This
self-reporting.
Yeah, self-reporting pollution. And environmental groups, local environmental groups, have decided to begin enforcing the law where the state government can't. And so they're bringing individual lawsuits against these businesses. And by and large, their lawsuits have focused on the businesses that have enrolled in the system and are self-reporting violations. So yeah, if you enroll in the system, you're more likely to end up on the losing end of the stick than if you ignore the law and hope not to get caught.
Yeah, so these environmental attorneys, Marco Gonzalez is a big name here, of course, on a lot of levels. They've won some victories and some fines and all, but is that a good thing or a bad thing? Because as you say, it kind of discourages people from coming forward and getting permits and being part of the system, right?
Well, they would say two things. They would say, the state isn't doing their job, we're going to do it for them, and that's something that the Clean Water Act anticipated. It actually was written, the Federal Clean Water Act, which applies to this situation, was written with the idea that regulators weren't going to have the resources they need to enforce the law. So the environmental groups are saying, yes, we're following the intent of the Clean Water Act. And then second, they're saying if we make an example of one business, other businesses around that business will get scared and start doing the right thing. The other side of it is, though, if you're a small business owner and you've self-reported that you're violating the law and you're surrounded by people that aren't following the law and suddenly you get sued, you're paying tens of thousands of dollars in legal fees to try and further comply with the law that everybody around you isn't even bothering to think about.
Right, and in some cases it actually puts them out of business.
Yeah, we talked to a business owner.
Is there any solution to this few seconds left? I mean, there doesn't seem to be any easy fix.
One simple thing that several people, environmentalists and industry representatives, have said, if you're going to give a business permit to a business, you should make sure that they have a stormwater permit if that's something they need to get. Okay. So they can't open if they don't have this permit.
So there's a fix. Well, great stuff, and we'll look forward to more reporting on this. It's a
Thank you.
Very important issue. Well, many newly elected San Diego politicians have said a top priority is tackling homelessness and the lack of affordable housing. The KPBS newsroom plans to air a lot of stories this year on the issue of housing, including next week an entire roundtable on homelessness. But Allison, your story this week revealed how much more new affordable housing in 9 cities in the North County, and you looked into all that. What did you find?
Well, I felt like I just wanted to get a sense of what all the different cities are doing, because if you look at the coastal cities, they do have a problem. They've got much less land. The land they have is so expensive that many of them haven't actually provided any affordable housing at all. And the ones that have, Encinitas and Carlsbad, it's kind of minimal. So I just wanted to see, to get it on the record, really. What are the North County cities doing in terms of investing and encouraging affordable housing in their areas? Because Solana Beach, for example, have struggled for years to get this one project with 10 affordable housing units past lawsuits from neighbors who don't want affordable housing nearby. And I feel like there is sort of a question here for jurisdictions, for communities, to ask themselves, do we want other people to take care of the lower income families, or do we want to be a complete community and provide housing that, teachers and policemen and people who aren't, earning the big bucks can afford to live in the community?
Well, I think that's a really interesting question, because the big step back here is if we don't have affordable housing for low and moderate income folks in a market like this, one of the most expensive in the country, how we expect that we're going to have people who work in service jobs and industrial jobs and other jobs that don't pay to the point where you can afford these very expensive properties.
Right, and I think this is what's happening, is that people are seeing it's no longer a problem for lower income families only, it's a problem for middle income families. So you have middle income families who are considering younger millennials perhaps moving out of town because there aren't any houses they can afford to bring up their kids. I think that we need to be changing some attitudes about the kind of housing that we live in and not take it for granted that we're all going to be able to bring up our kids in a single family home. Multi-family housing is what is being built now, and some of it is very nice. I mean, there is definitely, I think, a prejudice against multi-family housing, but if it's done right, and my story talked about one that I think was done right, and if it's sited right, it can really contribute to a community.
Now, in your research on this, where did you find they're kind of doing it right, and where is it encouraging in North County?
Well, the cities that have built the most recently there's Carlsbad, sorry, not so much Carlsbad, San Marcos has built the most, and Vista. The cities along Highway 78 are the ones that have more land. Carlsbad, to give it its due, has a plan for quite a lot of affordable housing to come in the next year or so. But Poway is not a coastal city, and Poway has not added any new affordable housing at all in the last 3 years and doesn't have any plans to either. In fact, it was in the news recently for rejecting
right, we talked about that on the roundtable.
On the roundtable. So, I mean, there's a city where I think, you have maybe some attitudes towards affordable housing which is no longer congruent with really what new affordable housing can do in a community, which is bring some quite high-end, nice housing into an area and allow people with different income levels to live there.
Dana?
You mentioned doing it right. I mean, what does that mean? Or at least, from the people that you interview, that you've talked to, what does doing it right look like?
Well, interestingly enough, some of the people who criticize this say that this affordable housing is subsidized with federal tax credits, and so it's the taxpayers what's making it possible, and that they are extremely expensive. But if you think about the fact that they are actually satisfying several different policy goals, many of them have solar, so that they are adding to our sustainable energy. They are being located next to transit and places where people can get around without a car, and it's been found that low-income families do tend to use transit more than high-income families. They're designed. They design so that they fit right into the neighborhood. And if you go inside, you find that they've got a lot of good amenities. They've got gyms and things you would expect to see in a high-end luxury condo. And also, many of them they also have social activities directors who are there to help the people in the community living there to overcome some of the problems that they may have and eventually move on with their lives. So they're really kind of little microcosms of sort of improving the community, these affordable housing units that are popping up in some places.
A few seconds left. Developers aren't keen on this, though. They usually pay in lieu fees. They don't want to build these, right?
Well, there are two kinds of developers. There are the developers who are going for the market rate housing, and there are the developers who are going for the affordable housing. The profits are less, but the risks are also less because you will never have a problem filling an affordable housing unit. Yeah. The one I visited in San Marcos had a waiting list of 700 people.
Well, we'll look forward to more follow-ups, and as I say, we're going to take up this issue and homelessness full-time next week on the Roundtable. Well, that does wrap up another week of stories at the KPBS Roundtable. I'd like to thank my guests, Dana Littlefield of the San Diego Union Tribune, Brooke Binkowski, a voice of San Diego, Ry Ribard, also a voice of San Diego, and Allison St. John of KPBS News. A reminder, all the stories we discussed today are available on our website, kpbs.org. I'm Mark Sauer. Thanks for joining us today on the Roundtable.